Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 240, I continue the discussion with Robert Heron, Mike Heiss, and Mark Henninger about what we saw and heard at CES 2015. So stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, recorded January 22nd, 2015. Episode 240, CES 2015 Wrap-Up, Part 2. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by SmartThings, which lets you monitor, control, and automate your home from wherever you are using your smartphone. Right now, SmartThings is offering Home Theater Geeks listeners 10% off any home security or solution kits and get free shipping in the U.S. when you go to smartthings.com/twit and use the offer code TWIT at checkout. And by enjoythemusic.com. A great site for high-end audio equipment and music reviews. They also have 185 show reports online, and more are added all the time. If you care about high-quality audio and music, visit enjoythemusic.com. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek and editor of avsforum.com. This week, I bring back the panel from last week when we talked about CES, and I'm so delighted to have them all back. We have Michael Heiss from Residential Systems and HiddenWires.com. Hey, Mike, welcome back.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here as always.
And to have you here as always. Of course, I also have Mark Henninger, my cohort in crime at AVS Forum, senior writer and social media manager. Hey, Mark, welcome back.
Thank you. Here we go again.
Here we go again. And Robert Heron of HeronFidelity.com. A well-respected journalist, and happy to have member of my panel back again. Say that three times fast. Hey, Robert, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So nice to have you here. So listen, those of you who are watching live at live.twit.tv or logged into the chat room at irc.twit.tv can post questions in the chat room as we go, and I will pass along as many as I can. Now, last week, we started talking about CES, and there was so much to talk about. We ended up spending virtually all the time on the video news, of which there was a ton. And so if you didn't happen to catch that show, I do recommend that you go back and check it out, because we covered a lot of ground, but there was so much more to get to that I said, hey, guys, how about coming back for round two? And fortunately, everyone was amenable to that and available, even better. So here we are to talk about part two of our roundup, or wrap-up, if you will, of CES 2015. Now, last week, audio got kind of short shrift, and I regret that, but here we have a chance to make up for it and talk quite a bit much more about audio. And I think we did mention last week, and I'd like to just sort of reiterate, because I think it was one of the most important non-stories of the audio section of the show, which is DTS:X, which is, people have been expecting that for a long time. Now, it's DTS's answer to Dolby Atmos and Auro. It's an object-based codec, which people are chomping at the bit for, and we finally got our first taste of it at CES. Now, let's start with Mark. You heard, there were two demos that we both heard. You heard them both, right?
Yes. Heard them both. And, you know, I'm a fan of immersive 3D object-based audio, just what you can do with it. It worked. It wasn't the best demo that I've heard in that category of sound, though. Neither one was the best.
Neither one. Okay. And the two were very different. One of which was on the show floor with 22 speakers or something, and the other one was in a more of a standard sized room. I thought that one sounded quite a bit better, didn't you?
Absolutely. The show floor was a really oddball arrangement, and that combined with the noise of the show floor, it just wasn't realistic, and it was harsh and grating. I think you actually used that description on AVS, but yeah, the other demo, which was in a hotel suite and somewhat resembled maybe a casual media room in a house, that was a lot better.
Yeah. Mike, did you hear either or both of those demos?
I did hear the Dolby demo when they were over in the Win. I have heard.
No, hang on. We're talking about DTS right now. We'll get to Dolby in a minute.
No. I have heard DTSX in a different venue. I think the best thing to say is I wouldn't go by anything you heard at the show. They're clearly going to correct whatever set you off the wrong way by the time this is introduced formally in March. And it's worth noting that the three standards that are in contention for ATS 3.0 are DTSX. They've made their submission, Dolby and Fraunhofer.
Right, exactly. And this points up yet another thing about the whole consumer electronics industry that happens time and again, which is, that multiple people bring out proposals for something or another, in this case, immersive 3D object-oriented audio, and then somebody has to choose or have multiple decoders in your AVR or whatever device. It makes it more confusing for the consumer. We'll talk about Dolby in a minute, but Robert, I wanted to get your hit on the DTSX demo if you heard either or both of them.
I did not, unfortunately, and that is one I would have liked to have caught. However, my question really for the gang is, if you were buying an AVR in the next 6 months or so, at this point, would you just hold off until you have an AVR that supports all of these codecs, or at least offers the option of upgrading the firmware as such? I mean, whatever my next AVR is going to be, which I'm really in no hurry to buy one, but looking forward, I'm thinking that I definitely want things like HDCP 2.2, but as far as the 3D audio codec support, it has to have Dolby, and it has to have probably Auro 3D as well. But if DTSX catches on with the content providers, or they start offering multiple formats for some of the best titles that I'm interested in, that's where I'm kind of hesitant to actually buy anything right now. So
it's a very good point. It's a very good point. I think, Mark, you mentioned to me, Mike, you might have also, that we haven't, Dolby Atmos has been out for 6 months, but how many titles have been released? Like 4, something like that, and virtually no Auro titles. And one or the other of you speculated with me once that because DTS has such a lock on the Blu-ray, the current Blu-ray audio situation, then are the studios waiting for DTSX before they start releasing? Are they kind of beholden to DTS in some way?
I don't think it's a question as much that they're waiting, or what they're waiting for is for the format to gel. I'm going to go back to what Robert was speculating on. I think it would be sort of foolish for DTS, and they're very smart guys, to introduce a format that couldn't easily be upgraded into an existing AVR. That's a lot different from HDCP 2.2 because that's baked into the chips. But I wouldn't be surprised if DTSX is something that could be blown into any of the current Atmos-capable AVRs or processors as an upgrade.
Let's go and speculate now. And I really do want to go along with Michael there because, of course, Atmos didn't come on these AVRs either. The two AVRs that I'm testing right now are both of them had to have it as a Atmos added as a firmware upgrade. You also notice that the AVRs pretty much avoided mentioning any particular format in the speaker connections and in the manuals. So it just seems to me that they even designed these units to not necessarily be exclusive to one format or the other. So hopefully DTS says that their new format runs on the DSPs that are in the current generation, and they find a way to make that happen. I think that would make a lot of people very happy.
Yep.
Yep, I agree. And I think, Robert, your hesitation is probably well-founded, at least for a little while, because we don't know for sure. I would tend to agree with Mark and Mike that probably the DTS codec will be firmware updatable into current AVRs, or at least this year's AVRs, maybe next year's. But we don't know for sure. And so
I know so many people who haven't even experienced a good lossless format yet from Blu-ray. They think that streaming provides the best audio quality or video quality. And I'm like, I'd like to see more people just take that step. And then the 3D formats with more content, I'll be happy to upgrade down the road. But I'm with you guys. I just want to see the hardware. I want to make sure that I'm not locked into something that I'm going to be missing out on a specific feature down the road, especially when it comes to sound.
Yeah. Now, Mike, you mentioned you heard a Dolby demo over at the Win. I didn't. I don't know if any of the other guys did, but what was that, and what was your impression?
It was basically the same thing that they were doing at CEDIA. It was nothing particularly new or different. They were not on the floor this year, as you both know, and they're just showing it to some of the press and manufacturers along with Dolby Vision. So nothing new.
Nothing new. We mentioned last week, I mentioned anyway, the demo that was done in the Amplifier Technologies, Inc., or ATI room at the Venetian. And I've since learned a little bit more about it. It was actually an incredibly complex system. Mark, you heard it, I know, right?
Yes, I heard it. I got that complete demo, I think very similar to the one that you described on your AVS post.
Right. Mike, did you hear that one? Did you get over to the Venetian?
I was over in the Venetian. I didn't see that. And as you've described them from your pictures, that's when I really wanted to see how they brutalized that hotel room. Just to put all those speakers in. I don't really want to hear it. I just want to see the speakers in that.
Oh.
Yeah, check it out. Check it out. I know.
How did they
and
attach
the
that to the ceiling? I mean, that's worse than a rock band trashing a suite.
Exactly. And take a look at the rear here. Yeah. How they did that, installed that into a hotel room, and then left without a bunch of holes in the walls and ceiling. I don't know. I don't know.
Oh. Now, you're given a fee for the damage afterwards. They'll pay it.
I suppose. So. I guess. Now, this is different from we showed this picture last week, but this one's different because I got it back from ATI. Jeff Hips, thank you very much at ATI for actually labeling which speakers were doing what. Now, this was very interesting to me because this system was so complicated. They had a Theta Blu-ray player. It's called the Compli Blue 3D. Sending bit streams, Auro and Atmos bit streams, to two decoders on what are called breadboards. So they are basically custom circuits. And then from there, they went into 12x6 switchers and Symmetrics DSPs with EQ, and then on to a bunch of amplifiers, and a total of 22 main speakers and 4 subwoofers in this system. And they were switching back and forth between Auro and Atmos. And what I found fascinating was that in the Auro system, when they were playing Auro soundtracks and recordings and so on, I think all the speakers were involved. And you have these 4 circular speakers up at the top that are these white circles that are what are in Auro called the voice of God. And they basically all play the same thing. It's basically a mono signal. And then they've got these other speakers around you, and it's a very immersive experience. When they played Atmos, those voice of God speakers, those 4 circular speakers up above, were not used because they were driven monorally with a single signal, with one channel of audio. And the Atmos overhead sounds were produced by the upper speakers in the back. There you can see them as John moves around. Atmos top back. Those were providing the overhead sounds from Atmos, as were the speakers in the front arch at the top. There you can see it as we move over to the right. And I found that to be, I mean, it worked okay, but I must admit I did not have as much of a sense of overheadness with the Atmos soundtracks as I did with the Auro soundtracks. Robert, you didn't get in to hear this, did you?
Unfortunately not. That is a fantastic looking setup, though. And it would have been, considering the work they probably put into getting that installed and to have some actual content to really take advantage of it, that was something I'm sorry I missed at the show. I really focused on video this time around, and I'm kicking myself for not checking out a few of the premiere audio demonstrations.
Well, you know, I spent more time on video as well, but I happened to stumble upon this room, which I was really, really happy about. Mike, you had something to say?
Can you go back to that picture for a minute?
Sure.
Because another one with Jeff's indications there. If you see where the Atmos top and back are, one of the reasons why it might not have sounded the way you would have expected is where those are really isn't an Atmos recommended speaker location.
That's right.
So I think they were trying to do just a little too much here. I mean, hats off to Jeff and Morris Kessler for this. This is really just wild. But that's really not the right speaker location. It either has to be reflected up or coming down from Children of Israel. Beware of the water.
But I'm left wondering something. We've when we've talked to the Auro folks, they've said that they recommend playing Atmos through the Auro configuration. So I'm wondering why they didn't, demonstrate that for us, in that room.
Well, but they
you
did.
said it was mono, and Atmos would want stereo in the or multi-channel.
Well, if you went straight with Atmos, but if you hear Wilfred talk, he basically suggests playing your Atmos but transcoding it to, or whatever, upmixing it to Auro and playing it through
I'm
the
sure he would.
We're talking about Wilfred,
I would love to hear that.
We're talking about Wilfred von Ballen here, who's the inventor of Auro, who's been on the show and talked about Auro. And yet another thing that comes up for me in this discussion is that Dolby claims that the Atmos system is quite robust and flexible and can be implemented in a variety of ways. And yet they do say we want speakers actually overhead or firing upwards and reflecting off the ceiling and bouncing back down, neither of which was true in this particular case. Now, Mark, you must have heard the rainfall demo. This, I think, was the real telling thing. Dolby has a new Atmos demo disc, apparently. I didn't get a copy of it at the show, but I did see the menu, and it's a new disc. And one of the things that's on that disc is a recording of some rain falling. And it switches back and forth between 5.1 and Dolby Atmos, which is you're supposed to have the rain falling down from overhead. And certainly there was a difference. You could hear the difference. I'm sure you could too. But it didn't sound like it was actually coming from overhead. There was still a hole in the sky, so to speak. Didn't you find that to be true?
Yes, I agree. Atmos is at its best when it can actually get that sound right over your head. And it's still a stereo sound. It's not that monaural voice of God. So, so you hear the raindrops coming from different parts over your head. But I did want to mention that as I was connecting a Yamaha AVR just yesterday, I discovered that they actually give you that third option as an official Atmos configuration, the way, that they have it in the ATI room. And also, coincidentally, the way that the DTSX speakers were set up in their hotel room demo with just that second layer of of bookshelf type speakers near the ceiling and pointed down a bit. So evidently, it's not completely out of the manufacturer's, discretion to suggest that implementation. But I agree with you. It simply doesn't do what you want. And I'm sure that the sound mixers who work with Atmos are going to be taking advantage of that ability to pan over your head.
Right. Mike, you had something to say?
No, just I think we're still at a learning stage. And it's exactly what Mark just said, that the mixers are going to look for that lowest common denominator. So when it's, parsed out into one of these 3 or maybe 4 format choices, that it'll sound right. Everybody's still got a lot of learning to do. Everybody's
still got a lot of learning to do. Remember when multi-channels music was first announced or introduced, and we heard some demos of it, and this cowbell came clanking out of one of the surround speakers. Now the mixes are much better, and I think the same thing's going to happen here. We're going to have people taking some time to learn how to create content, and also manufacturers on how to where the best place to put the speakers and the best kind of algorithms in their products and so on. So, Mike, I think you're exactly right. We're at the very early stages of this immersive audio situation, but I myself have a great deal of hope for it. Robert, you've heard immersive audio before. What's your overall feeling about it?
Especially with some of the Blu-ray standards, if that's what you're referring to, some of the multi-channel tracks I've listened to on Blu-ray audio are fantastic. And if you do just even basic bitrate comparisons too, they are, in some cases, at least for the handful of titles that I own and I use in testing, they come very close to maxing out the actual bitrate available for audio. And I've never heard a more dynamic experience. And as far as just even Blu-ray movies go, the difference between just standard Dolby Digital or even Dolby Digital DTS versus True HD and DTS HD Master Audio, those differences are night and day. And I really feel that anybody who's a movie fan who's not experiencing that, even if you don't own a capable AVR, most AVRs with HDMI can at least accept that as a decoded PCM format. So there's almost no reason not to take advantage of that. I know a lot of people I talk to are just kind of over discs in general, but if there's one reason to stick with it, is for the quality of audio that they're putting out today is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and those will sound even better through the upmixer. One of the things that I'm looking forward to being able to do sometime in the spring when all this comes out is to test the DSU, the Dolby Surround upmixer, from regular content into Atmos to what DTS is going to do, and match those with the type of soundtracks that Robert's mentioning.
I think the Dolby Surround mixer is a big deal. I mean, it's a serious part of the investment, not an afterthought at all.
In some cases, it may be the reason to buy it more than the content.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good point. Exactly right. Well, we got a couple questions in the chat room, which I'm going to get to in a minute here. But before we do, I'd like to thank one of the sponsors for our episode this week, which is SmartThings. Now, let me tell you about CNET's highest rated smart home system. It's called SmartThings. Now, SmartThings allows you to monitor, control, and automate your home from anywhere using your smartphone. Now your lights, locks, thermostats, and home security are all connected through a single app. You don't need a different app for every product, which is, I think, really, really cool. Intuitive controls allow you to set the rules on your smart home through their free iOS, Android, and Windows phone apps. And with SmartThings, you can customize the way your smart devices talk to each other. So now you can say, for example, tap "Good night" on your phone, and the lights will turn off, the thermostat will adjust, and the doors will lock. You can set your lamps to brighten each morning at sunrise or when you want to wake up, which for me is somewhat after sunrise. You can even keep your home protected with SmartThings, with home security, motion detection, water detection, and more. Very important in flood-prone areas. You can even enable your speakers to broadcast dogs barking if there's motion outside the house. How cool is that? You can set up a camera to take a series of photos when unwanted motion or entry is detected, and you can have your doors recognize when you are close and unlock themselves as you walk up. Man, we're talking Star Trek here. There are so many ways to customize your SmartThings home. And most recently, I have to tell you that SmartThings was named CES 2015 Editor's Choice Award by Time. And they took a look at an awful lot of stuff at the show and came up with this award for SmartThings, and we congratulate them for that. So to get started setting up your smart home right now, SmartThings is offering Home Theater Geeks listeners 10% off any home security or solutions kit, and you get free shipping in the U.S. when you go to smartthings.com/twit and use the offer code TWIT at checkout. And we thank SmartThings very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. Okay, let's get to a couple of questions in the chat room here. SSB 201 is asking, why are more AVR vendors not incorporating WISA directly into the box? Now, WISA is the Wireless Speaker Association, Wireless Speaker and Audio Association. And we're going to talk, we are going to talk about them. In fact, we might as well right now. I don't know why.
Here's the reason.
Oh, yes, Mike, you have an answer.
Here's the reason.
It's moolah.
Yeah, look at Klipsch. They just debuted a WISA system, but it comes with a pod. Yeah, if you built it into those AVRs, you might not be selling those AVRs because most people aren't necessarily getting a wireless system.
I can tell you, having been in the AVR business in a prior life, you're conscious of every cent, of every feature. And in a really price-compressed market, which AVRs are right now, I would ask, I forget the name of the chat room person who asked this question, if you had to choose, if you were designing an AVR, would you choose between Atmos, DTSX, or more HDMI inputs, or WISA? Which are the things that you really need, and which are the things that are better served by outboard products? And I think it's not that people think WISA is bad. It's just that there's only so much you can put in a box. And as my father would say, you got to make your numbers.
Yes, that's true. For those who don't know, WISA it stands for Wireless Speaker and Audio Association, and they are promoting a standard whereby you can transmit uncompressed, high-resolution audio up to 8 channels to wireless speakers in a home theater environment or even in a whole home environment. And they were at the show. They were at the Venetian. I stopped by and saw them because they're buds, and saw a couple things. Mark, you mentioned the Klipsch speakers, and I think we have a picture of that just to show everybody that Klipsch was there with a WISA module, separate module. And there was also one called the Enclave. And I thought this was kind of interesting. This was a 5.1 speaker system, which lists for $1,000. And it's, you know, it's a lower end system. It's not a Klipsch kind of a system, but for $1,000 you get 5.1 totally wireless. Well, not totally. You have to plug each of those speakers into a wall outlet. That's one of the things about wireless audio is that each speaker needs its own amplifier. And the amplifiers, of course, need power. So you got to plug them into the wall or have them be battery powered. But I think they reached a nice price point there at $1,000 for a 5.1 system where you don't have to route audio wires cabling all around your room, and you've got a 5.1 system there. And Klipsch, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, they introduced a new reference series that is WISA compatible, right?
Right. So a system that includes center, towers, bookshelf type monitors, a sub, and that wireless hub, which I guess incorporates HDMI inputs and switching, and of course broadcasts the signal, I think up to a 7.2 system.
Mm-hmm. I think where you might see WISA eventually have a reason to be in an AVR, we've been talking about Atmos and DTSX and other multi-object-based audio systems. If you want to have ceiling speakers, it's easy to cut a hole, relatively so, to put a speaker in the ceiling, and there's usually AC for a ceiling light floating around there, but you can't run, it's difficult to run the audio. WISA would be a perfect way to power the speakers that do that.
Very good point. Very good point. You put a powered speaker up there, and as you say, there's power up there for room lights anyway, probably. This is one of the questions I've had in my own room, is wondering how in the heck am I going to get the wire up there somewhat unobtrusively. Now, again, in my room, it doesn't really matter. I don't have the spousal acceptance factor problem that a lot of people do. In my house, I have control over my office and the theater room, and my wife has control over everything else. And that keeps domestic tranquility. But I could run wires all over that room if I wanted to. But I myself would like to kind of keep it neat and tidy, I suppose. Anyway, that's a good point about maybe a good reason to have WISA in an AVR is so that you could put the overhead speakers up there without having to worry about audio cabling.
Hey, did Klipsch say anything about how they were actually getting audio to the speaker setup? Is it with that hub unit? Is it a pass through between your gear and the AVR? Are you using that in essence as a hub for your audio sources, and then that feeds into an AVR? I guess it'd be just going directly to the speakers from that point.
Yeah,
but
it has to go to the speakers. It's a 4-input distribution hub, is what they're calling it.
I guess it just leaves it out of the loop altogether. Then it takes care of decoding and everything. Or
they may do what SSB 201 was asking about. Building a little box that has the decoding in it, and it's more of a single source kind of thing than an AVR. But $20, what he's talking about, that is a huge amount of money to add to an AVR at any price range. Without a doubt.
Yeah, and Mike would know because he's worked as you said, in the AVR business for quite some time. JJ to the 4884 asks, is Auro more like a movie theater sound system? Certainly it is found in some movie theaters. Atmos is found in more. But they're both found in movie theaters, commercial cinemas. So they both translate into home theater reasonably well. Robert, how many times have you gone to see an Atmos movie in an Atmos theater? Have you ever done that?
Not yet.
You must.
I have a terrific theater here right near me, a few miles away, and I believe they have every one of the new high-end audio formats but Dolby Atmos. So I have to verify. If not, I really have no excuses. I mean, Dolby's lab is in the city, in San Francisco, and there are a couple of other specific theaters nearby that I could go experience that at. But I recently just saw the darn, what it was like a 2014 mashup of all the movies that came out. And I realized I had not seen a single one of them. I've been too busy going through the collection and streaming and between all the other sources of video. Going to the actual theater has not been on a priority of mine for a while.
It's true of a lot of people. A lot of AVS members sort of have said nuts to going out to the movies. Their theater at home is better, in many cases it is. But I have to say that I really enjoy going out to the movies, to the commercial cinema, when there's something interesting to experience. Like, for example, Atmos. I try to go and hear as many Atmos soundtracks as I can among the movies that are at least tolerable to me.
I'm convinced.
But it's relatively easy. There are, I think last I heard, there are something like 700 Atmos-equipped movie theaters worldwide, which isn't very many, but as opposed to like 200 or 300 Auros. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, that's the point. Here we are in L.A., or you're up in Burbank. I'm down here in the dreaded Valley. The second largest city in the country, and the capital of the entertainment business, particularly from the creative side. Do you know of an Auro-equipped auditorium anywhere here in the L.A. area? I don't think so.
I do. There's one in Calabasas.
Oh,
which is way the heck out there. But yeah,
but
we need to go out there. Yeah. It's a little bit less of a trek for you, but it's still, it's a bit of a trek. I think there are 2 or 3 in LA as opposed to 10 or 12 Atmos theaters. So that is a big problem.
And there are 0 in Philadelphia. Atmos, Auro, anything like that.
Anything like that. So Mark, when you have heard Atmos soundtracks in theaters, but you've had to go to New York for that, haven't you?
That's right. Yes, I had to go to New York City to experience it.
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, I hope they get more and more because, as I've always said, when HD TV first came out, you can talk about it till you're blue in the face, but you can't really, you don't know what it is until you see it. Same with UHD, same with high dynamic range, same with Dolby Atmos or Auro. Any of these things that we're talking about, we talk about them and they're important, but what's critical is for consumers and people who enjoy the movies and audio and video to go out and experience it for themselves. That's the only way to really know what's what. And I have been kind of disappointed at the slow pace at which these things have been rolled out to where people can actually see them. Let's see. Rusty Bones is asking, when they switched between Atmos and Auro, and this is back in the ATI room at the Venetian, could you tell the difference when they didn't tell you they were switching? Well, they did tell us they were switching. I don't think there was ever a time when they didn't tell us they were switching, so it wasn't a blind test. And we could get into a whole discussion about blind testing and the value thereof, but that I think is a subject of another day, shall we say?
Yeah, the TV was on, and
it was telling you what it was. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and besides, you weren't listening to native Atmos versus native Auro. To switch between Atmos upmixed to Auro versus Auro isn't really a fair comparison.
Well, they didn't do that. They played native, and the problem and my complaint about them playing it native was that they used a compromised Atmos speaker configuration relative to the Auro.
Fair enough.
Yep, exactly right. Okay, another audio story that I want to make sure we cover here is the return of Technics. You guys, I'm sure, all remember the Technics brand, which is a sub-brand of Panasonic. For years and years, they were, very well-regarded audio products, and then they disappeared for a long, long time. And Mark, tell us a little bit about how they have returned.
Well, they returned with high end. I mean, one system that they call reference that's very high end, 55 grand, and then that's based on towers and a really big amp and a so-called network media player, and then a second system that's 10% of that price, $5,500, and that's based on some bookshelf speakers. So it's a highly digital centric, both of them are highly digital centric systems. The reference system actually sends the signal to the amplifier through Ethernet cables and sends the volume control information to the amplifier. And it's a Class D amplifier. So that's part of the system. The other part are their new speakers, which Technics used to make speakers that they had dynamic drivers like woofers, but they're flat instead of conical. And in this case, they created a concentric driver that has this flat dynamic driver that then has a tweeter in the middle, and both the bookshelf and the style and the floor standing style speakers use that. So they seem to be very obsessed with getting everything to be as flat as possible and in phase as possible. And I sat through a technical description of all that, as well as some music demos. And there's only one problem with it, which is in the end, I wasn't blown away. It was interesting and it was good. And I kept saying, it's very dry and accurate, very dry and accurate. But it didn't suck me in. It didn't create the grand sound stage and the goosebumps that I'm used to. On the other hand, I heard this is really their second US show ever. One of the technicians, I got their business card, and it's one side's entirely Japanese, so they're seem to be relatively new at this, a little bit nervous. Certainly didn't nail it as far as the demo music. I think every other room that I went to, they were more savvy about what to play to engage just any American journalist or industry person who walked in. In this case, I don't want to be critical, but they were playing the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and it wasn't doing it for me. And they introduced it as, we're going to play some church music for you. I'm like, okay, but I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting some sort of a choral music or something that had a sense of space, and it wasn't recorded that way.
I think we have a couple pictures. We have a couple pictures of the Technics system here if we can
just
get
to lab.
Elaborate. Go right ahead.
Yeah, well, Technics is not a brand that I associate with high-end church music reproduction at all. I think of it as a relatively populist brand, something you would play rock through, something you would, of course, they're famous for their turntables, and especially, among DJs. So, I really expected something different just as far as the whole mood of it went, and it just seemed very difficult for me that they would be able to go and compete in that $50,000 system realm where there are just dozens upon dozens of brands. I mean, I would say there are dozens of established brands, in that field, and
it's going to be tough.
It's baffling.
Mike.
Yeah, it's just going to be tough, and Mark is right. I mean, memory fades, but Technics was really never, other than their DJ stuff, and I think they had some 12-volt stuff, it really wasn't a high-end brand. It was just a different brand. And to go up against the established players in the high-end audio business, it's going to be really tough.
What's the relationship with Panasonic? Because the demo I saw, or at least the hardware demo, was right in front of the Panasonic booth. And is it a wholly owned company by Panasonic, or is it?
It's not even a company. It's just a separate brand. I mean,
okay,
and always was. It's a sub brand, like Onkyo Integra or old Pioneer Elite, and
Gotcha.
Technics was sort of in that vein.
Yeah. Well, one of the other interesting, what I thought was quite interesting introduction speaker-wise, was over at the Hard Rock, where Harman was holding court. Interestingly, not as an official part of CES, but they rented out a bunch of space in the Hard Rock and had a bunch of stuff there, including an update to the Revel Concerta speaker line, which is, you guys, I'm sure all know the Revel brand name, right? I mean, it's very well respected.
Kevin's best.
Kevin's best, exactly. Kevin Vakes is the guy behind them, and a very smart guy and a very good fellow. He's been on the show a number of times. And the Concerta is what is often called the quote-unquote entry-level line of the Revel speakers. They can get very, very expensive. I've always loved the sound of Revel speakers. I think Kevin's a great designer, and his team does a fantastic job. And the Concerta line has been the same for the last 8 years. And now finally they've come up with an update, a refresh, as you will, of the line. And, I thought it looked pretty good. I thought it sounded really good. There's a picture of it with 1-inch tweeters and a waveguide and 2.5-way towers and 2-way bookshelf and 2-way center. Did Robert and or Mike, did you get over to the Hard Rock at all? Did you hear anything from Harman? Did you hear these?
I did not. Again, I'm just kicking myself for not making that trip. I would love to hear the latest. I would love to hear Kevin's latest.
If Kevin designed them, they're going to be good, and I would just take that on faith. Yeah,
I do. I agree. Mark, you heard
the pricing on something like that?
Oh, even better. Check this out. The 5.1 system with the larger towers, the center, 2 of the bookshelf for surrounds, monopole bookshelves for surrounds, and the 10-inch powered subwoofer, 800 watts, just over $5,000.
Hell, I'll take 2.
Not bad. Not bad. Really.
Want.
Want.
Bad. Now, that in a second sub.
Yeah, exactly. Mark, you mentioned, and rightly so, that there was a little bit of imaging problem in the demo because these speakers were right up against a flat panel TV.
Yeah, you and I were there together, and there was, it was an optimum placement for music listening. But, as I recall, that didn't last that long anyway, because while we were doing that demo, Neil Young walked into the room and all the attention basically changed.
Yes. He sucked the attention right out of everything and over to himself. I was amazed at how he walks around the show and he's got a photographer and a videographer just shooting everything he does. Can you imagine living like that? I can't. It would just be so bizarre. And yet there he was in the Harman room. He wanted to hear Heart of Gold on the Mark Levinson system at the other end of the room. It wasn't on this Revel system. It was on the really high-end system. And, sounded great. That is until his voice came in. But I'm not a fan. It has nothing to do.
Although in fairness,
He
In
was
fairness,
everywhere at the show.
Neil Young and Harman, or Pono and Harman, however it works, announced a deal around CES time where they're going to collaborate on something for the automotive side. And remember, that is the overwhelming part of Harman's business these days. I ain't no secret about that.
Is automotive, right? And that's true. You're right. They did announce a collaboration in the automotive space with Pono, so that's kind of interesting. Well, that brings up the whole question of high-res audio, and I want to talk about that in just a second. If you guys will just hang out for one moment more while I thank our second sponsor for this episode, which is enjoythemusic.com. Now, if you love high-fidelity audio or consider yourself an audiophile, and I know most of us certainly do, you have to check out enjoythemusic.com. You'll get daily news and updates, including all types of gear, recording techniques, and industry news. And you can read reviews of the latest equipment ranging from speakers, amplifiers, cables, headphones, turntables, and more. And hey, if you love to tinker around or fix equipment, Enjoy the Music's DIY audio articles are written by experienced professionals in the audio field. And each project includes a difficulty rating. Really, really cool and very important for those of us with limited soldering skills. Now, their high-end audio manufacturer links provide access to quality products from A to Z, and you can tune in to enjoythemusic.tv for live performances like behind the scenes of the Blues Masters at the Crossroads concert. So if you really care about high-quality audio, be sure to visit enjoythemusic.com. And don't forget to sign up for their monthly newsletter where you'll get site updates, new equipment reviews, show reports, and more. Plus, active members are entered into all their great contests. So go to enjoythemusic.com. And we thank Enjoy the Music very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. Okay, so high-res music. We were just talking about Neil Young and Pono. Sony introduced the ZX2 high-resolution Walkman, which we actually have a photo of here. And I want to pose it to you guys, all three of you. I love to get your hit on this. How important is high-res music to the marketplace? Is it really that much better? Is it going to be a big deal as opposed to, say, just regular old CD? We learned at CES this year that Tidal, TADAL.com, is now streaming uncompressed CD quality music. And Kevin Vakes, among others, who used it as a demo for the Revel speakers, said, wow, this is really great. So, Robert, what's your overall take on this whole high-res audio thing that's happening these days?
Anything beyond the over-compressed audio that everyone is used to at this point is a step up. Even for the streaming services currently available, the most popular, even Pandora or Spotify, their premium services that even up the bitrate a little bit sound so much better to my ears. Even on less than ideal hardware, it is a much better experience. And when I switch over to things like Blu-ray or just high bitrate, high word count audio, the experience is better than the compressed formats I'm used to. So the more compressed formats, at least. So I'm all for it. And even getting to CD audio quality, which, it's not a lot of data per se, it still, to my ears, is just, it's superior in almost every way. And on a portable device, sure. The thing is, I think for me at least, those devices, especially Sony's new Walkman, I believe that incorporates something like a headphone amplifier as well, which I would like to just do some A/B comparisons, maybe without the headphone amplifier, to what kind of quality can you get out of the standard cell phone right now, or a smartphone with lossless tracks that you can play on, like an Android device or an iPhone. Both of those can support lossless playback. Granted, you're not going to have an ideal amplifier if you're using a headphone that requires that, but I don't. For me personally, I'm not dropping $1,200 on a new Walkman, but for the home theater side of it, though, I am spending more money, I've noticed, on things like audio CD, or specifically Blu-ray audio, and just because it's some hardware I currently have, and I can push the hardware and the gear I have even harder with higher bit rates, higher quality, and for that, my ears are thanking me, and especially if you can A/B it with the more compressed version. It really is a step up, and it's sweet to be able to give your ears that treat, and to treat your gear that you've spent money on to the best source material you could find, be it audio or video. So
great points. Mike, what's your hit on high res audio?
It's a great idea. Anything that helps improve the quality of sound is fine, but I think that high res for now has sort of been Pono, Astle and Kern, the Sony Walkman, devices in that category. And what needs to happen at the same time is people have to bring that into the home. There has to be a really good system like those Revel speakers, or any really good high-end through and through from beginning to end audio system. And without that, high res is, it's just going to be these things, and it has to be more than that.
Yeah. Mark, you've heard quite a bit of high-end, high-res audio now. You listen to that Sony Walkman, and I'm thinking also about there was a pair of headphones you reviewed recently that have their own amplifier built in. Robert was talking about, maybe the amplifier in a smartphone isn't the best, but you could also bring that outside as well, couldn't you?
I've had very good luck with my phone, which is Samsung Galaxy S4. But yeah, the blue MoFi headphones had a built-in headphone amp. I found that I didn't actually have to use it, even with my phone. I also have a little Sony A17 Walkman that plays back uncompressed high-res PCM. But, I think you really do have to be at home in an extremely quiet room with quite high-end gear to even start to have a hope to hear the difference with high-res audio versus CD quality audio. CD quality audio is still a great thing compared to compressed MP3 or compressed Apple, iTunes audio. And in that sense, Tidal, man, I love Tidal. That's the best thing to happen to me. I signed up right after CES. It's all I'm listening to at the moment. I discovered that you can actually download tracks to your portable devices, so you can get the uncompressed, CD quality on your cell phone and swap those tracks out, and it's just a subscription. It's fantastic, and that definitely sounds better. Tidal is supposed to be bringing MQA audio to streaming as well, so we're going to be in the realm of high res streaming very, very soon.
Yeah, we talked about MQA a little bit last week, and I'll just reiterate quickly that this is a Meridian system that's essentially a compression algorithm for reducing the file size and bit rate required of high-res audio without compromising the quality in the least little bit. And that's an amazing claim to make. But it seems to be true. We have yet to really hear a demonstration of how it really is true. We've heard some secondhand reports of it, but there's still more research to be done on this MQA. But I think it's kind of a big deal, and we shall see how that plays out.
I'd also like to learn more about just how they're producing some of this high-res audio as well. Are they
good point.
Are they expanding the range in terms of frequency response? Are they just upsampling? Where did it come from, and how exactly is it better? Because I've heard specific cases where people have actually measured some of the files from some of the providers, and it really was nothing more than just an upconverted track, and it really wasn't
converted CD. Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much.
And Ono got into a kerfuffle over that.
So did HD Tracks, actually. This is what Mark Waldrop at AIX Records calls provenance. How was the music recorded? How was it mastered? How was it encoded and made into the final distribution product? If at any place in the chain it went down to CD specs or less, then you can't recover that. And if you try to say, oh, this is high-res audio, but it came out of a CD or something like that, you can't really claim it's high-res audio. It's just padding the bits with zeros, if you will. So, Robert, you make an excellent point, and one we have to be very vigilant about as we now think about high-res audio.
Awesome.
So, there you go.
I want good quality audio, but I often do wonder, where is it coming from? How is it being produced?
Yep. Another issue. Sorry, go ahead, Mike. Did you have something?
Nope.
Oh, no, actually, I was just going to say that one of the things that came out of at least what I heard, in the descriptions of MQA is that, it's not about humans hearing, those frequencies that usually only dogs can hear. It's actually about the timing and the precision of the time. So maybe it's not necessary to have, to have those frequencies that you can measure, up at 60,000 hertz, 70,000 hertz. The claim is that if you add that precision to the timing of the music, your ears will hear a deeper, more precise stereo image, for example. Those are the kinds of claims being made.
That's Meridian's claim, exactly, that they're not encoding that ultrasonic frequencies. They are encoding the timing information, the transient information down into the 7 microsecond range. And when you do that, you retain much more of the sense of the high resolution audio than if you simply include those high frequencies and don't worry about the timing. I wanted to spend a couple minutes here. Mike, you in particular, we started to talk a little bit about Super MHL. MHL being mobile high definition link, I believe. It's more or less HDMI for mobile devices, but they're bringing it home, right?
Well, they're talking about bringing it home. It is something MHL has typically been for portable devices to get content with a small connector form factor out of a smartphone or a tablet into a big system, and to charge, another big part of it. But Samsung, who was doing some 8K demos, as I think we mentioned and talked about last week, was looking for a way to get that from the source to the screen. HDMI right now just can't do that. So they worked with some partners, and that's sort of the origin of Super MHL. And I think you've got some of the specs on that is pretty impressive, but it's easily a year out, year and a half.
We have a couple of pictures. Here's one of the color space or color gamut that MHL is supposed to be able to transmit, which is called BT 2020, very wide color space, which is not currently available in many TVs, if any. But when it is available, MHL apparently will be able to transmit it. Other pictures that we have here include, here are some of the connectors. And one of the nice things about Super MHL is that it's what's called a symmetric connector. So you can plug it in either way. It doesn't have a right way and a wrong way to do it. Sort of like
cable
lightning
agnostic too. It can pretty much go over any cable type as long as the technology is enabled on both ends. And the other thing too is they were showing a demonstration at the Super MHL booth of it's capable of transmitting up to 40 watts of power too. So they claimed at the booth that they were driving that 8K display with just the cable providing power.
I find that really hard to believe.
I did too. But
I'm sorry.
They did claim it, but
that was one huge display, and you're not driving that 40 watts.
And I mean, they're talking. The picture we just saw there was of 16-bit or 12-bit anyway. I guess 12-bit color, maybe 16-bit. And
12-bit, 10-bit, 16-bit.
There it is. Okay, and so you're supposed to be
8-bit, 10-bit, 16-bit.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if we take a look at and you can see the banding. This is by the way a very good example of why you want more bits in your display and in your signal. Notice on the 24-bit, which is 3 times 8 bits, you have all this banding in the sky. And in 30-bit, 10 bits times 3, you have less. And in 48 bits, you have much less still. And that's why we want to have more bits in the signal and in the display, because then we don't have this banding. The other thing that they talked about was high frame rates, 8K up to 120 frames per second. Holy smokes. That's quite amazing to reduce motion blur. Exactly. So we're looking at a few of these slides from their presentation. So, Robert, you got to the MHL booth, and I didn't. That was one that I missed, and I'm sorry that I did.
That was great, actually. And later this year, if not very soon, NHK will be testing 8K broadcasts. So it's not like this is pie in the sky stuff. There will be sources and cases for it, although for most consumers, we're still getting our feet wet with 4K content and UHD in general. So, and we don't even have a Blu-ray player yet that'll do it, but
right.
I could see a lot changing before the year's out.
And I don't want to be Debbie Downer and throw rain on this because I'm the guy wearing the shirt, but it's a ways out. And the natural question, which I'm surprised nobody's asked yet from the chat room or elsewhere, is, so does this mean no more HDMI? And I asked, after I went to the Super MHL booth, which was a little further down into the South Hall, I went back to HDMI and found Steve Venuti, and he was pretty straight up about it. And his response was, I don't think you're going to see us be left behind. By the time that there's a real need for this, I mean, as Robert said, we hardly have 4K yet, and 8K is going to have tests, and that's all well and good. But it's not going to be on a practical basis for a while. There are a lot of things that need to fall into place, including the content and the sets, and most importantly, the Silicon Images and Panasonics of the world that makes the chips for this have to bring those to bear. And that's easily a year away. By that time, just like DTS wasn't going to be left sleeping with Atmos, I don't think HDMI, billions and billions served, they're not going to surrender them.
Yeah, point well taken. Point well taken. Well, you know what? We've come again almost to the end of another hour of talking about CES, and there's yet more to talk about. But we'll wait and do that another time. I want to end today's show, however, with something really silly. I chose to go, you know, at CES, we work so hard and we go to all these booths and we talk to all these people and we write up a bunch of stuff, and isn't that much opportunity for fun. Well, Harman provided an opportunity for something really amazing, which was a live concert by Kiss. Did you guys go to Kiss?
No.
No.
I did do Kiss mini golf though.
I did.
There's a facility in Las Vegas for Kiss mini golf, and I highly recommend that. Oh
man, okay. Well, believe it or not, these are photos that I took at the Kiss concert on Thursday night at CES. Harman hosted them, and I went and I took my sound meter and my earplugs, and they were averaging, I'd say their average was, when they were playing a song, was on the order of 120 decibels dBc, with peaks up into the 125 and beyond range, and it was astonishing. Now, I'm not a Kiss fan. I never have been.
I'm shocked to hear that.
I know. But I am a fan of spectacle. And this is spectacle to the nth degree. I mean, they had pyrotechnics, 30-foot flames, giant signs, explosions. It was really amazing. And I had to wonder, you know, Gene Simmons is still the bass player after 42 years. And Paul Stanley is that's Gene Simmons right there with his bat wing thing. I tried to get a picture of him sticking his tongue out, and he did it a bunch, but I didn't get any really good shots of it. Anyway, both Gene and Paul are over 60 years old. And how they could have done this for 40 years plus, more than 40 years, at 120 something decibels and more, I just don't get it. I talked to one of the...
they're looking for a tuba player.
Oh, well, I'm there, man. I'll be the tuba player, absolutely. I asked one of the sound guys if he wore hearing protection during the concert, and he said, yes, absolutely, no question about it. And then I asked one of the lighting guys, and I said, did you wear hearing protection? He says, nah, not this time. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And I'm going, well, how old are you? And he goes, I'm in my mid-30s.
Yeah, but then you asked one of the roadies, and he said, do you wear hearing protection? And he said, what? I can't hear you.
Exactly. Anyway, I just had to end with that because it was just so amazing. As I say, spectacle. It was grand spectacle. And I'm really glad I don't have to do that every night because my hearing would be completely destroyed. Anyway, yes, as JJ to the 4884 in the chat room says, I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. Damn straight. Me too.
And how old is Mick Jagger?
Oh, he's probably close to 70.
I think he is.
Yeah. Yeah. Unbelievable. Anyway,
I have to believe those in-ear monitors that they use are helping protect their hearing as well, using like either foam tips or something like that.
Yep. Yep.
There's no way you could be exposing yourself to those kind of sound levels for that long and not feel it. I have DJ friends that are a little younger than me that are completely deaf, and it's sad to see. So protect your hearing.
Don't do
folks.
it. Protect your hearing. Yes.
Wear good earphones.
Absolutely. I'm sure those guys wear custom molded in-ear monitors, which do help isolate your hearing from the external sound. But that's, of course, trusting that the monitor mixer isn't cranking it up.
So, I think your internal organs would get wrecked up just from the visceral SPL out there.
I would think so, too. Well, listen, we've come to the end of an hour. I thank you so much for indulging my little kiss thing there. And I want to thank my panelists for this week's week number 2 of talking about CES. Thank you so much. Mike Heiss is at residentialsystems.com and hiddenwires.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at CaptainVid, CaptainVid. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, guys.
You bet. And Mark Henninger, of course, is at avsforum.com and Twitter handle avsforum. Mark, thanks again for being here.
Oh, thanks a lot, Scott. Always fun.
Always fun. And Robert Heron at Heron Fidelity and the likely Twitter handle of Robert Heron. Thanks again for being here, man.
My pleasure, Scott. Thank you.
You bet. You can find me, of course, at avsforum.com, and you can email me at scott@twit.tv. And you can follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott. And you can always find previous episodes of Home Theater Geeks right here on twit.tv/HTG. Also on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit Home Theater Geeks. Next week, my guest geek is scheduled to be Joe Kane, who is going to come on to talk about what we talked about last week, which is the formation of the UHD Alliance and the Ultra HD Blu-ray specs. I'm really interested to learn what he has to say about these new standards that he's been talking about for a long time and I've been talking about for a long time. And let's see if they go far enough for him, shall we? Do hope you will join me for that. Until then, geek out.